The clippers buzzed angrily like a swarm of hornets in the school nurse's office as each of 12-year-old Ariel Daniels' braided locks dropped to the floor, revealing the alopecia she had painstakingly hidden for so long. Evelyn Rohr stood by with a cruel gleam in her eye, commanding the hesitant nurse to continue shaving until not a single strand remained. At last, the teacher had found her perfect target, a quiet young artist whose mother was deployed thousands of miles away on active duty and whose medical condition made her even more vulnerable. A secretly recorded video by Maya Thompson, Ariel's best friend, had almost immediately crossed oceans and landed in Lieutenant Colonel Eric Daniels' hands. The school's perfunctory one, day suspension and dismissive public statement failed to recognize one crucial fact. They hadn't merely humiliated a child, they had declared war on a battle-tested officer. And when Eric Daniels strode through the school doors 3 days later in full military dress, his imposing presence silenced every hallway. Students and teachers alike understood in an instant that this was not just about a girl's hair, it was about justice. Ariel Daniels, a gentle-eyed 12-year-old African-American girl, sat quietly sketching in her diary. Her long braids had been meticulously arranged to conceal the patchy bald spots lining her scalp, scars of the dreaded alopecia she'd battled since the age of 9. Evelyn Rohr, a strict disciplinarian obsessed with order, stood in front of the class, her cold gaze fixed on Ariel. The staccato click of high heels on the polished floor echoed through the room, ratcheting up the tension. "Ariel Daniels!" Evelyn's voice cut through the silence like a blade, startling the girl into dropping her pencil. "Yes, ma'am," Ariel whispered, eyes fixed on her desk as fear welled in her chest. With a swift motion, Evelyn snatched Ariel's sketchbook and flipped through its colorful pages, her lips curling in disdain. "Are these notes or just doodles? This is exactly why your grades have slipped. Do you really think elaborate hairstyles and childish drawings will get you anywhere?" In truth, Ariel was one of the top students in the class, but she dared not argue. She simply bowed her head and endured. From the back row, Maya Thompson, Ariel's loyal friend, watched with eyes blazing, every muscle in her body tight with anger. Just then, the intercom crackled to life. Principal Thomas Wexley's cold voice announced, "Effective immediately. The school will enforce its dress and grooming code without exception. All students must comply fully." A smug smirk flickered across Evelyn's face. She turned back to Ariel, enunciating each word with calculated menace. "Perfect timing, Ariel. Step up here." Ariel's heart pounded. She stood, legs trembling, and walked to the front of the room under the weight of everyone's eyes. "This," Evelyn proclaimed, circling Ariel like a predator stalking prey, "is a blatant violation of our grooming policy. Your hair is far too long, too elaborate, and utterly distracting." I have alopecia," Ariel stammered, desperation creeping into her voice. "The school office granted me—" "Alopecia?" Evelyn interrupted, voice icy. "Don't use your condition as an excuse to dodge discipline. Either you remove those braids yourself right now, or I'll handle it my way." Tears welled in Ariel's eyes as she choked out, "Please, my mother already spoke to the principal." "Your mother isn't here," Evelyn snapped, grabbing Ariel's arm and hauling her down the hallway toward the nurse's office. "Come along, we'll fix this immediately." In stunned silence, Ariel's classmates watched her forced march down the corridor. Maya, trembling with helpless fury, fumbled for her phone and hit record. Inside the cramped nurse's office, Ariel sat shaking on the examination chair. Evelyn directed Nurse Patricia Adams to fetch the electric clippers. Though Adams hesitated, her conscience warring with her obedience, Evelyn asserted in a commanding tone, "I have full authority." "This is a mandatory school policy, Nurse Adams." The clippers sprang to life with a chilling whir, and Ariel's carefully woven braids fell away in clumps, like the strands of her dignity ripping from her scalp. Bald patches and raw skin burst into view, and Ariel's world shattered as tears streamed down her face. "I'm sorry. I can't," Nurse Adams whispered, her voice thick with regret as she lowered the clippers. When Evelyn finally released her grip and strode out, Ariel was left alone in the sterile, cold room, surrounded by the fallen strands of her hair and her pride. Outside the door, Maya ended her recording, hands shaking with grief and rage. She knew that this footage was more than evidence. It was the spark for the fight Ariel so rightfully deserved to win. Outside the nurse's office, Maya quickly slipped her phone into her jacket pocket as familiar footsteps echoed down the hallway. Principal Thomas Wexley appeared moments later, his 58-year-old face creased with the permanent scowl of a man accustomed to smothering scandals before they could become full-blown crises. "What on earth happened here, Evelyn?" he asked softly but warily, his gaze flicking to the thick strands of black hair littering the floor. Evelyn Rohr straightened her blazer in an instant, regaining her usual air of icy composure and arrogance. "I was simply enforcing policy, Mr. Wexley. Ms. Daniels has repeatedly violated the school's grooming code. I'm just doing my duty." Principal Wexley frowned. "But she's a child, and this isn't right." "I understand," Evelyn replied, nodding once, her tone almost soothing, though her eyes betrayed no remorse, only irritation at having to justify herself. "I've taught here for 20 years. I know exactly what it takes to maintain discipline." Wexley fell silent for a moment, weighing his words. He knew Evelyn wasn't just a veteran teacher. She was deeply connected with the school board. A full-scale scandal could severely damage the reputation he'd spent his career building, especially now, as he neared retirement and hoped to avoid any messy headlines. "All right," he said finally. "Evelyn, I'm suspending you for 1 day to calm things down. 1 day, then everything goes back to normal." "You really think that will be enough?" Evelyn asked, a hint of sarcasm in her cool voice. "This will blow over fast. A minor misunderstanding about the rules." Wexley emphasized the word misunderstanding, looking at her pointedly. "Take the day off, let things settle. I'll handle the fallout." Evelyn nodded, a satisfied gleam in her eye as she realized the principal was siding with the school's and his own reputation rather than protecting an innocent student. She exited his office with perfect composure, even allowing herself a small, triumphant smile. Meanwhile, Ariel Daniels sat silently in her mother's car, staring blankly out the window, her small hands clutching the hoodie Maya had handed her. Naomi, her normally vibrant mother, sat beside her, utterly shaken. Every comforting word lodged in her throat, because she knew no reassurance could erase the pain her daughter had suffered. When they arrived home, Ariel quietly climbed the stairs to her bedroom, shut the door, and curled up in the corner of her bed. Darkness swallowed the small room, making it feel cold and oppressive. Naomi knocked softly on the door several times, but was met with a chilling silence. Her heart ached with helplessness. She knew only one person could truly steady them now. With trembling hands, Naomi dialed Eric, her husband, a lieutenant colonel stationed in Afghanistan. Each ring seemed to stretch on forever, and tears blurred her vision as she faced her own powerlessness. Finally, she left a desperate voicemail. "Eric, you need to come home right away. Something terrible happened at school. They hurt Ariel, and I don't know what to do. Please, come home." Thousands of miles away, on a small base in the blazing Afghan desert, Lieutenant Colonel Eric Daniels had just returned from a tense patrol. He sank onto his bunk and switched on his personal phone, only to be stunned by Naomi's urgent message. The stern features of the seasoned officer went ashen, and his eyes burned with both pain and rage. He immediately opened the video Maya had sent and watched, horrified, as his daughter was humiliated. His fists clenched, breath coming in ragged gasps, fury surged through him. "This isn't a misunderstanding," he whispered, voice trembling with anger. "They've declared war on my family." Eric sprang to his feet, dialing his commanding officer without hesitation. He demanded a flight back to the United States immediately. In that moment, his sole mission was clear. He would return to protect his daughter, demand justice for Ariel, and make those responsible pay. At the same time, under the scorching heat and swirling dust of the military base in Afghanistan, Eric Daniels had just stepped out of the strategy room after a grueling 4-hour briefing. His shoulders were still stiff with the weight of the top secret mission he was overseeing. He wiped the beads of sweat from his brow, planning to head back to his quarters for a moment's rest. But no sooner had he settled onto his bunk than his personal phone erupted with urgent notifications. A bad feeling hit him, and he grabbed the phone without hesitation. His eyes locked on the worried text from his wife, Naomi, and on an attached video from Maya, Ariel's best friend. Eric's hand trembled as he tapped to play the clip. In seconds, his breath grew heavy, his heart seized by each brutal frame. Ariel, his little girl, trembling in the cold nurse's office. Evelyn Rohr, eyes alight with cruel satisfaction, methodically running the clippers through Ariel's carefully woven braids as the girl's sobs echoed. With each passing second, a volcanic rage boiled inside him. An anger sharper than any battle stress he'd ever known. His grip on the phone turned white-knuckled. A searing pain gripped his chest as he saw the helpless horror in Ariel's eyes he loved more than his own life. "Unforgivable," he muttered, voice icy but quivering with fury. He dialed his commanding officer at once. "Sir, I need emergency leave. Something serious happened to my daughter and I must return immediately." On the other end, his CO paused, knowing Eric was not a man to abandon his post lightly, then replied in a firm yet sympathetic tone, "Understood, Daniels. You're approved. We'll get you a flight back to the States as soon as possible." He packed in minutes and boarded a military transport, launching a more than 20-hour journey fueled by anxiety and rage. He couldn't sleep. The images from the video replayed relentlessly, each loop fanning the flames of his wrath. He remembered Evelyn Rohr's smug expression. It wasn't by chance she targeted Ariel. Eric knew Evelyn well. When she'd served under his command, her racist outbursts, insubordination, and baseless accusations against black soldiers had forced him to discipline her and remove her from service. Since then, a grudging hate had smoldered in her, waiting for this moment to strike. He ground his teeth, furious at himself for not foreseeing her move to Lakeside Elementary, his own daughter's school. This wasn't mere misconduct. It was a vindictive plot meant to wound him through the one person he would always protect. As the plane descended toward the U.S. military airfield, Eric called Naomi. His voice was steely yet reassuring, brimming with resolve. "Naomi, I'm on my way home. Tell Ariel her father will never let anyone hurt her again. This time, those responsible will pay. I promise you, this is a fight I will win." He ended the call and gazed out at the city lights below. In the reflection of the window, Lieutenant Colonel Eric Daniels' eyes blazed with determined fury, a vow sealed in his heart. This time, they will know what real justice looks like. That morning at Lakeside School felt like any other, until it wasn't. A black military vehicle suddenly rolled to a stop in front of the school gates, drawing the curious gazes of hundreds of students waiting to head inside. The door swung open, and Lieutenant Colonel Eric Daniels stepped out in full dress uniform, his face cold but radiating authority. His purposeful footsteps echoed down the familiar hallway, and the entire school fell into an uncanny hush. Students froze in place, pressing against the walls with eyes wide in equal parts shock, respect, and a touch of fear at the imposing presence of the soldier. Eric didn't pause or glance around. His gaze was fixed on one destination, the teacher's lounge, where Evelyn Rohr still sat, savoring her false peace. Without warning, the lounge door burst open. Inside, Evelyn was casually cradling a steaming cup of coffee and chatting with a few colleagues. The instant her eyes landed on Eric, every movement froze as if time itself had stopped. "Lieutenant Colonel Daniels," Evelyn said softly, attempting to mask the tremor in her hands gripping her mug. "You still remember me, Evelyn," Eric replied in a low, icy tone, his eyes as sharp as bullets aimed straight at her. "I thought you'd forgotten who once commanded you at Fort Benning." The other teachers recognized the danger in the air and hastily slipped out, leaving only Evelyn and Eric alone in the suddenly suffocating silence. The moment the last colleague exited, the room's tension became nearly unbearable. Evelyn forced calm and carefully set her coffee on the table. "I was simply doing my duty as a teacher, Eric. Surely you understand the importance of maintaining discipline." "Duty?" Eric stepped forward, flames of anger dancing in his gaze. His voice was low but authoritative. "Forcing a 12-year-old girl with alopecia to shave her head. Was that your duty? You've never changed, Evelyn. You still abuse your power to impose your hateful prejudices on others." Evelyn's cruel smirk twisted into something less confident as fear crept into her eyes. "Don't lecture me about morality, Eric. You're the one who ruined my career with baseless accusations." Eric advanced another step, unwavering. "Baseless? Have you forgotten all those false complaints you filed against black soldiers out of pure hatred? You weren't just insubordinate. You brought shame on the entire army. I was the one who signed your discharge papers. Don't pretend I don't know why you chose my daughter as your target." Evelyn paled, her hands shaking as they gripped the edge of the table. In that instant, her carefully maintained facade crumbled, revealing the deep-seated bitterness she'd harbored for years. "Fine. Yes, you destroyed my life," she spat, her voice quivering with rage and resentment. "I gave my youth to the army, only to be cast aside for minor mistakes. I want you to feel the helplessness of watching someone you love be humiliated, just as I did." Eric shook his head, his expression one of disgust mingled with pity. "You still don't see your mistake. This isn't about you and me anymore. It's about an innocent child who was deeply hurt by your selfish vendetta." Evelyn stammered weakly, panic creeping into her tone. "I did nothing wrong. The school agreed it was just a small misunderstanding. You can't threaten me forever." "A small misunderstanding?" Eric laughed coldly, stepping back, his gaze even harder. "You're wrong, Evelyn. This time I won't let you escape accountability. You will face the full force of the law for what you did to my daughter." He turned and walked out, leaving Evelyn alone in the silent lounge, her arrogance drained away and replaced by a profound terror. Once out in the hallway, Eric drew a deep breath, knowing this fight was only beginning. But this time, he would show no mercy. Evelyn and the entire school would answer for their misdeeds. For Eric Daniels, this was more than a battle for justice. It was a father's sacred vow to protect his daughter at any cost. Just as Eric stepped out of the lakeside hallway, a large group of parents and students had already gathered outside the school gate, holding up sharply worded signs demanding justice for Ariel. In less than a day, the clip Maya had secretly recorded had spread like wildfire across social media, drawing millions of outraged and sympathetic comments. The story gained even more traction when a major figure entered the fray. Grace Yamada, one of America's most renowned civil rights attorneys. With decades of experience taking on social justice cases, Grace was known for her razor, sharp strategy, decisive action, and remarkable effectiveness. That evening, Grace sat in her office, replaying Maya's video. Her face showed both anger and resolve. After a few thoughtful minutes, she looked up at Eric and Naomi, who sat across from her, and said firmly, "I'll take this case, Mr. and Mrs. Daniels, and let me be clear from the start. This is not a minor misunderstanding. It's a clear act of personal vengeance, and we will expose it." Eric nodded slowly, his soldier's gaze full of trust. "I completely agree, Grace. Evelyn deliberately singled out my daughter for revenge." Grace jotted a few notes in her pad, then looked up sharply. "Can you tell me more about your history with Evelyn?" Eric exhaled, his expression tightening as he recalled the unpleasant past. "She served under my command at Fort Benning. Evelyn carried a racist mindset, regularly incited conflicts, and made baseless accusations against black soldiers. I was the one who signed her disciplinary papers and forced her out of the army. She's harbored hatred for me ever since." Grace nodded, her eyes cold but satisfied. "Then we have more than enough to prove her personal vendetta. Maya's video is just the beginning. We'll compile full evidence, witness statements, and Evelyn's military record to build an airtight lawsuit. This time, she cannot escape responsibility." The very next day, Grace held a public press conference outside her law office, drawing dozens of reporters from around the city. With calm yet powerful delivery, she announced, "What happened at Lakeside School is far more than a matter of discipline or dress code. It is a personal revenge, a hate-driven act, and a gross abuse of power. We will pursue every legal avenue to secure justice for Ariel Daniels and her family." Grace's declaration ignited a firestorm. News outlets and social feeds covered the story nonstop. The hashtag #Justice for Ariel quickly trended worldwide, rallying millions against Evelyn's cruelty and the school's mishandling. Each morning, the scene outside Lakeside swelled with protesters stretching hundreds of yards, their signs reading, "Justice for Ariel," "No Racism in Education," and "Fire Evelyn Roar Now." Parents and students voiced fury and disappointment, demanding Principal Wexley's resignation and criminal charges against Evelyn. Under mounting pressure, Principal Thomas Wexley held another press briefing. His tone remained cold and obstinate. "I reiterate this was an unfortunate dress. Code misunderstanding. The teacher involved was suspended for 1 day, as policy dictates. I urge everyone to remain calm and not overreact." His downplayed remarks only fueled the backlash. Grace immediately fired back at the press. "Principal Wexley is minimizing the incident to protect the school's and his own reputation. We will prove otherwise in court. The school and Evelyn Roar must answer for the harm they inflicted on Ariel." Meanwhile, at home that evening, Ariel sat quietly at her computer, reading the outpouring of support from millions of strangers. For the first time since the incident, she felt she wasn't alone. Yet, the pain still throbbed within her, a wound not so easily healed. Eric entered the room and gently placed a hand on Ariel's shoulder. His voice was warm but resolute. "Ariel, I promise you, this time we won't stay silent. The whole world is on your side. They will be held accountable for what they did." Ariel looked up at her father, and for the first time in days, a flicker of hope lit her eyes. She nodded softly, feeling the strength and comfort of her father's embrace. Their legal battle was just beginning, but now, Ariel knew she truly had someone fighting for her. That very morning, as the city boiled over with protests demanding justice for Ariel, veteran journalist Malik Reed sat in his cramped office, eyes glued to his computer screen. Malik was renowned for his tenacity and sharp instincts when covering racial injustice and corruption in education, but something told him that the Lakeside incident was far more than it appeared. For days, Malik had pored over financial records, internal memos, and leaked emails from staff at the supposedly pristine school. Each layer he peeled back revealed a darker web, an institutional cover, up hidden beneath a veneer of respectability. Late that afternoon, Malik stumbled on a bombshell, a clandestine line item in the school board's accounts labeled Special Legal Defense Fund. His heart pounded as he realized this was the key he'd been seeking, a slush fund set up to shield teachers and administrators accused of racism or other serious misconduct. The deeper he dug, the worse it got. Over the years, this fund had quietly paid out hundreds of thousands of dollars to bury discrimination scandals, forcing families to sign non-disclosure agreements in exchange for silence. Malik exhaled sharply, anger flickering in his voice as he whispered to himself, "This is no isolated incident. It's a system built to protect people like Evelyn Rohr." Just then, his phone buzzed. An unfamiliar voice crackled on the line, hesitant but resolute. "Mr. Reed, I'm Alex Baker, IT technician at Lakeside. I have something you need to see." Within the hour, Malik met Alex at a small downtown cafe. Alex, young, soft, spoken, but with sharp eyes, opened his laptop and played a security camera clip he'd secretly rescued from the school servers. "Watch closely," Alex murmured, glancing around nervously. "Principal Wexley ordered me to delete all footage from that day, but I made a backup. You're the only one who can bring the truth to light." Malik felt the room go still as he watched Evelyn Rohr standing beside Ariel in the nurse's office, clippers in hand, a twisted satisfaction lighting her eyes as Ariel's braids tumbled to the floor. Though the clip was silent, Ariel's silent, pleading posture and Evelyn's relish were unmistakable. Looking up at Alex, Malik's gratitude was mixed with seething outrage. "You did the right thing. This video is the strongest proof we need to show Evelyn's actions were malicious, not some minor policy misunderstanding." Alex exhaled with relief, yet still trembled. "I know the risk I'm taking, but I couldn't stay silent. Evelyn and her protectors must be held to account." The next morning, Malik's expose ran on the front page under the headline, "Secret Black Fund Shields Racist Staff at Lakeside School." The fallout was instantaneous. Thousands poured into the streets in unprecedented demonstrations. Outside the school gates, parents and students demanded criminal charges and the outright removal of Wexley and Rohr. Cornered by the uproar, Principal Wexley called an emergency press conference, but he no longer seemed in control. Pale and unsettled, he stammered, "We will conduct a thorough investigation into these allegations. The school pledges full cooperation with authorities." Meanwhile, in her quiet living room, Evelyn Rohr sat curled on a chair, hands shaking as she watched the headlines detailing the scandal she'd hoped remained buried. For the first time since the incident, the walls she'd built around herself were crumbling, and she realized the system that once protected her was unraveling. At Grace Yamada's law office, the civil rights attorney reviewed Malik's video with Eric and Naomi. A fierce smile crossed her face as she declared, "Now, we have the incontrovertible evidence of Evelyn's malicious intent. This is more than a lawsuit. This is a battle to dismantle the entire network that's shielded people like her for years." Eric squeezed Naomi's hand, eyes fixed on Grace with unwavering resolve. "We'll do whatever it takes to ensure Ariel, and every other child, never endures this injustice again. This time, they will pay the price." That very morning, with the entire city ablaze in protests demanding justice for Ariel. The courtroom doors opened for the family's lawsuit. The air outside the courthouse crackled with tension as hundreds of supporters held up signs and chanted, eager to witness the truth laid bare. Inside, Evelyn sat at the defendant's table, her face taut with anxiety, even as she strove to look composed, avoiding everyone's gaze. Across the aisle, Ariel perched between her parents, her small hands trembling, but her eyes blazing with determination. Grace Yamada rose, her voice steady yet full of feeling as she addressed Ariel. Ariel, can you please tell the court what happened at Lakeside School that day? Ariel inhaled deeply, then stood and walked to the witness stand. The hush in the room was palpable, as every eye tracked the brave 12-year-old. Her voice quivered but rang clear. That day, Ms. Evelyn called me to the front of the class and said my hair violated the school's code. I tried to explain I have alopecia and had permission to wear my hair that way, but she wouldn't listen. She dragged me to the nurse's office, ordered the nurse to bring out the clippers, and shaved my head myself, while I was crying and begging her to stop. A tear slid down Ariel's cheek. Summoning all her courage, she continued, Ms. Evelyn didn't just cut my hair. She humiliated me in front of everyone. I know she did it to get back at my dad. Grace leaned forward, her tone gentle but insistent. Why do you believe this was personal revenge? Ariel met Evelyn's eyes, her voice firmer now. Because while she was shaving me, she said, your father will know what it feels like to lose his honor. I didn't understand then, but I do now. A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. Evelyn's face went ashen, every ounce of her carefully maintained calm evaporating. Grace then called the next witnesses, former students who had suffered Evelyn's bias firsthand. First up was Jasmine Cole, her voice breaking with emotion. When I was in Ms. Rohr's class, she forced me to wipe off my makeup because my skin tone wasn't appropriate. She constantly criticized my hairstyle and other students of color, saying we'd never succeed looking the way we did. Then came Marcus Harris, his expression grave as he spoke. Ms. Rohr once singled me out in front of the whole class with racial slurs. She mocked the way I talked, my background, and said students like me were a burden on the school. Each testimony cut through Evelyn's veneer of respectability like a blade. She sat with her head bowed, any attempt at defense drowned out by her own ugly history being laid bare. But the trial's climax arrived when Grace held up Evelyn's military discharge papers before the jury. We've investigated the defendant's past. Ms. Rohr served under Lieutenant Colonel Eric Daniels, where she repeatedly displayed insubordination and racial bias, filing false complaints against black soldiers. It was Lieutenant Colonel Daniels who disciplined her and forced her out of the Army. Murmurs filled the courtroom as everyone absorbed this revelation. Evelyn's eyes flew open in panic. Her long, buried past was now unmistakable proof of her motive. Grace stepped closer, her gaze icy. Ms. Rohr, you deliberately targeted Ariel to settle a personal score with her father, didn't you? Flustered, Evelyn stammered. I was just enforcing the school dress code. Grace cut her off sharply. Your own security, cam footage supplied by Alex Baker proves your actions were malicious. The video shows you not only coldly, but gleefully shaving Ariel's head, despite her tears and pleas. The silent video filled the screen. Ariel's helpless sobs and Evelyn's cruel satisfaction hung heavy in the air. The judge rapped his gavel to restore order as Evelyn shrank in her seat, powerless before the torrent of evidence and eyewitness accounts. That day's proceedings ended on an electrifying note. Outside the courtroom, Eric embraced Ariel, pride in his voice. You were so brave, Ariel, Today, you did what many grown-ups could not." Ariel looked up and managed a small, genuine smile for the first time since the ordeal began. She knew the battle wasn't over, but bolstered by her family and community, she was ready to see justice done. Immediately after Lakeside's dark secret was laid bare, Ariel's family's lawsuit went to trial without delay. On the morning of the hearing, the courthouse crackled with tension. Hundreds of supporters gathered outside, holding signs demanding justice and hoping to witness the truth emerge. Inside the courtroom, Evelyn sat at the defense table, her face taut with nerves as she forced a calm composure, avoiding everyone's gaze. Across the aisle, Ariel sat between her parents, her small hands trembling, but her eyes alive with fierce resolve. When the bailiff called the jury back into the room, a hushed anticipation fell over the crowd. After what felt like an eternity, the jury, four-person, a middle-aged woman with a steady presence, rose, paper trembling in her hand. She cleared her throat and spoke each word with firm clarity. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Evelyn Rohr, guilty of intentionally inflicting severe emotional and physical harm on Ariel Daniels. We further find that Principal Thomas Wexley is guilty of complicity in covering up and protecting these wrongful acts." A ripple of excited murmurs swept through the courtroom. Evelyn bowed her head, knuckles white as she gripped the table. Principal Wexley stared at the floor, shoulders slumped in bitter defeat. The four-person continued in a strong, unwavering voice. "Given the profound suffering endured by Ariel and her family, we unanimously award compensatory damages in the amount of $10 million, to be paid by Lakeside School, Ms. Evelyn Rohr, and Mr. Thomas Wexley. Let this verdict send a clear message. No one has the right to violate a child's dignity or exploit their authority to oppress and retaliate." As the verdict concluded, the courtroom erupted in applause and cheers from Ariel's family and supporters. Eric embraced his wife and daughter, his voice thick with pride as he whispered to Ariel, "You did it, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you for standing up so bravely." But the moment was far from over. Just as the emotional celebration peaked, the courtroom doors swung open and two uniformed officers strode in. Evelyn looked up in alarm, eyes wide with disbelief. "What's happening? I thought this was over," she stammered. One officer held up a warrant, voice cold and authoritative. "Evelyn Rohr, you are under arrest for your involvement in past abuses and mistreatment of students. We have obtained clear evidence and witness testimony. Please stand and come with us." Instantly, the courtroom fell silent again. Spectators watched, breath held, as Evelyn rose, handcuffed before everyone. Her once proud facade crumbled into raw fear and helplessness. Principal Wexley remained seated, stunned, as he realized he too could not escape accountability. All his efforts to shield the school's reputation had backfired in the most dramatic fashion. Outside, the crowd that had waited anxiously burst into triumphant cheers as word spread. Signs waved overhead, voices united in celebration. Today's verdict had delivered justice not only for Ariel, but for every student who had ever suffered injustice under Lakeside's roof. Eric, Naomi, and Ariel exited the courtroom into a hero's welcome. Though small in stature, Ariel had become a powerful symbol of courage and resilience. She stepped forward with newfound confidence, her heart finally unburdened by the darkness Evelyn had tried to impose. In the distance, investigative reporter Malik Reed documented every historic moment, knowing this would be a pivotal chapter in the fight against racism and corruption in education. By Ariel's side stood Grace Yamada, a satisfied yet determined smile on her face as she told the Daniels family, "We've secured a crucial victory today, but the battle isn't over. We will continue fighting to ensure no other student ever endures what Ariel did." Eric nodded, his soldier's resolve shining in his eyes. "That's right. Today is just the beginning. From now on, anyone who thinks of harming our children will think twice before acting." Together, they walked into the bright sunlight, carrying with them an unshakable belief in justice and a brighter future. Ariel clasped her parents' hands, feeling at last that the shadow Evelyn cast over her life had finally lifted. On that day, more than a verdict was delivered. A clear message echoed far and wide. Every act of injustice, no matter how small, must answer to both the law and conscience. The high of their courtroom victory didn't last long before a new darkness crept into the Daniels family's life. One early morning, Eric found a small white envelope on their front porch, no return address. His hand trembled as he opened it and pulled out a single, typed sheet, the chilling words printed in all caps. "Stop now, or you will regret it." Eric stood frozen, a cold shiver running down his spine. He knew immediately this wasn't an idle threat, but a warning from those who felt endangered by their legal triumph. He stepped inside and handed the letter to Naomi, his eyes anxious but his voice steely. "They're trying to scare us into giving up, but I'm not going to let them win that easily." Naomi read the note, her expression hardening with resolve. She met his gaze and said firmly, "We've come too far to back down now. If they think threats will make us abandon justice for Ariel, they're sorely mistaken." Yet Eric's instincts as an officer told him this threat was only the beginning of a far more complex conspiracy, one involving powerful people in local politics. He couldn't let his family live in fear. Quietly, he launched his own investigation. Over the next few days, Eric tracked suspicious activity until he uncovered a shocking truth. Several Lakeside School Board members were secretly colluding with influential political figures to pressure the lawsuit, aiming to minimize its legal impact and bury any remaining scandals. He found proof that the board's top 3 members, James Patterson, Valerie Simmons, and Robert Walsh, had been holding clandestine meetings in a discreet administrative office. Peering through a slightly ajar door, Eric overheard their cold, calculating discussion. "If this drags on, we stand to lose everything," Patterson fretted. Valerie Simmons snapped back. "Then make it crystal clear to them. If they don't stop, the consequences will be far worse." Robert Walsh, the oldest and craftiest of the 3, concluded icily, "I'll alert our political allies. They need to understand this isn't just Lakeside's problem. It's about protecting our shared interests. We can't let this set a precedent." Hearing this, Eric's blood boiled. He couldn't believe the public virtue signaling these people displayed masked such dark schemes. Instead of reacting angrily, he slipped away, more determined than ever. Back home, he laid out everything for Naomi. She listened, anger flickering in her eyes, but spoke with steadfast calm. "If they think political clout and intimidation will force us to quit, they've severely misjudged us. We're fighting not only for Ariel, but for every child who could be next." Eric nodded, his voice resolute. "You're right. I'll hand all of this evidence to Grace and to reporter Malik Reed. It's time the public saw their true colors." Within days, news of the board's political pressure scheme exploded across the media. Malik Reed published the documents, and the city erupted in outrage once more. People recognized this battle wasn't just the Daniels families. It was a stand against a corrupt power structure. Outside the Lakeside School Board offices, hundreds continued to protest, holding bolder signs than ever. "No more abuse of power. Justice for Ariel now. We will not be silenced." Meanwhile, Eric, Naomi, and Ariel met again with Grace Yamada at her law office. Grace looked at them with fierce confidence and declared, "Those who threatened your family have made their biggest mistake. They underestimated the power of truth and justice. I promise you, this time we will make them face the full consequences they deserve." Eric and Naomi exchanged determined glances. Far from intimidating them, the threats had ignited an even stronger resolve. They knew the road ahead would be long and arduous, but now nothing could deter them. And Ariel, small, but burning with newfound courage, spoke clearly and bravely for the first time to everyone in the room. "I'm not afraid anymore. I know my parents and everyone else have my back. I will keep fighting until the end." In that moment, the room pulsed with unwavering faith and strength. They all understood. Whatever storms lay ahead, the Daniels family would never back down in the face of intimidation, because they were fighting for truth, for justice, and for every silent victim of injustice. After the Lakeside School Board's dark conspiracy was laid bare for all to see, Naomi realized this wasn't just about protecting Ariel anymore. It was a pivotal moment to stand up for every child who'd ever suffered discrimination in silence. Summoning all the determination and courage of a mother, Naomi decided to step into the spotlight. She agreed to appear on the acclaimed national TV program Voice of America, a show known for tackling America's most pressing social issues. That evening, under the bright studio lights, Naomi sat across from veteran reporter Linda Harris. Naomi's calm yet fiery gaze met the camera as she began. "I'm not here just to talk about Ariel, my daughter. I'm here because Ariel is not the only victim. Out there, countless other children are enduring the same injustices in silence, and we cannot let that continue." Her voice steady but filled with emotion, Naomi recounted the family's ordeal and the decades of cover-ups at Lakeside. She made clear this was more than Evelyn Rohr's personal vendetta or Principal Wexley's complicity. It was a system that had knowingly protected and enabled these abuses. "We claim to live in a society that protects children," Naomi declared. "Yet, we allow those in power to exploit their authority to ruin young lives. I call on all parents, educators, and community members to stand up together and defend every child's rights and dignity." As soon as the interview aired, social media erupted. The hashtags #Justice for Ariel and #Protect Our Children shot to the top of the trends, drawing millions of Americans into the conversation. Shares, comments, and supportive videos flooded every platform, creating an unprecedented wave of public attention. But amid the outpouring of support, a fierce backlash also emerged. Anonymous accounts began downplaying the case, accusing Ariel's family of media grandstanding and calling Evelyn's actions a minor misunderstanding blown out of proportion. The online debate grew more heated by the hour, splitting into two clear camps: those demanding systemic reform in education, and those defending school authority and stability. Yet Naomi refused to back down. She continued appearing on online forums, giving live interviews, and speaking to major news outlets. Her confidence and resolve won her growing public sympathy. In a live press conference, she stated emphatically, "If we stay silent in the face of injustice, we become accomplices. I refuse to be silent, and I know I'm not alone. Justice is not something we ask for, it's something we demand and fight for." Her words resonated far and wide, awakening the conscience of many. Thousands of families nationwide shared their own stories of hidden injustices, forming support groups and launching online campaigns to help other students find their voices. Meanwhile, the Lakeside Board and its allies, feeling the pressure, intensified their smear tactics, spreading disinformation in a bid to quell the movement. But each attempt only fueled the public's anger and strengthened their unity. The media battle raged on more fiercely than ever. Clips, images, and courtroom footage circulated constantly, making it impossible for anyone to look away. Day by day, the pressure on Lakeside's leadership and local politicians mounted, forcing them to confront the consequences of their long, suppressed wrongdoing. For Naomi and the Daniels family, their steadfast courage was sparking real change. Eric looked at Naomi with pride, the soldier's resolve shining in his eyes. "You did the right thing, Naomi. This fight isn't just ours anymore. You're giving a voice to everyone who's been silenced." Naomi nodded, her eyes alight with determination and hope. "You're right, Eric. What we're doing now will pave the way for a better future for Ariel, and for every child." And amid the fierce debate, Ariel herself remained unbowed. The once quiet girl had become a symbol of strength and courage in the fight against educational injustice. Looking up at her mother with pride, Ariel spoke softly but firmly. "Thank you for not staying silent, Mom. Because of you, I know I'm not alone, and that my voice can change the world." In that moment, Naomi knew that, no matter how many challenges lay ahead, their unity and resilience would carry the day. Most importantly, she understood that her daughter would never again live in fear. That crisp autumn morning, as the heated debates on social media and in the press showed no sign of cooling, Ariel's story finally reached the highest levels of state leadership. Governor Eleanor Richards, renowned for her unwavering stance on justice and educational equity, decided to speak out publicly about the case captivating the nation. At a packed press conference in the state capitol building, Governor Richards stepped to the podium, her expression serious yet sincere. Looking each journalist in the eye, she declared firmly, "What happened to Ariel Daniels was not only a cruel and morally wrong act, it represents a profound failure of our education system to safeguard every student's basic rights. We cannot allow something like this to happen again." She paused for a moment, scanning the room, then pressed on with even greater resolve. "That is why today I am announcing that our administration will introduce new legislation called the Ariel Protection Act. This law will guarantee every student's privacy, health, and dignity, and will require all schools to adhere to far stricter ethical and accountability standards." As soon as she finished, the room erupted in applause. Reporters fired off questions about the bill's specifics, but the governor was unflinching in her answer. Under this new law, no one will be permitted to exploit their authority to violate a student's privacy, humiliate them, or cause them harm. We will establish rigorous oversight measures and clear penalties for any violations. The announcement sparked another wave of positive reaction. Millions voiced their support online, rallying behind the #sign Ariel Protection Act and urging the state legislature to pass the bill without delay. Watching from home, the Daniels family felt the immense impact of their tireless efforts. Meanwhile, behind closed doors at the Lakeside School Board offices, the atmosphere was very different. Board Chair James Patterson, Valerie Simmons, and Robert Walsh sat in stunned silence, poring over the newly revealed emails and financial records that exposed years of corruption, cover-ups, and discriminatory practices. "We simply can't withstand this pressure any longer," sighed Patterson, exhausted and defeated. "The public, the governor, they're all coming after us." Valerie Simmons, who had once relied on her political connections to protect the board's interests, finally looked uncertain. "We've gone too far, and it's completely out of our control now. I don't see how we can continue." Robert Walsh, usually the calmest and most calculating, admitted the truth. "Perhaps it's time we resign. That's the only way to salvage what little credibility we have left." The next day, in a hastily arranged press conference, all 3 board members announced their resignations, citing the need to restore stability and public trust in our education system. Everyone knew, however, that the real reason was the scandal they could no longer conceal. As news of their resignations spread, the city erupted in celebration. People poured into the streets, cheering what felt like another victory for the movement to protect students' rights and end discrimination. At home, Naomi and Eric watched the headlines with joy and pride. Naomi squeezed Eric's hand, voice thick with emotion. They finally had to face the truth. I believe the Aerial Protection Act will help Ariel, and thousands of other students too. Eric pulled Naomi into an embrace and nodded firmly. This is exactly what we set out to achieve. We're not just winning for Ariel, we are building a better future for everyone. Upstairs, in her quiet room, Ariel sat sketching a new drawing. A school where every student was treated equally, free from fear or worry. She glanced up at the TV, where her mother stood strong and confident before a cheering crowd. Ariel smiled, knowing she would never have to fight alone again. At the governor's office, phone lines buzzed nonstop with messages of support pouring in from around the state. Eleanor Richards gazed out her window, reminding herself that this was only the first step of a long journey. But she was confident that, with the community's backing, the new law would soon become reality, truly protecting children like Ariel, who had already endured too much. That day, neither the Daniels family nor the entire community doubted one thing. Truth and justice may take time, but in the end, they will always prevail. After the political storm passed, and those who harmed Ariel finally faced the consequences of their actions, the Daniels family began to find moments of peace again. But Naomi and Eric both knew that despite their legal victory, Ariel's emotional wounds would need more time to fully heal. In the weeks after the dust settled, Ariel often spent long, quiet hours alone in her room. But rather than give in to her sorrow, she turned to art as a way to release her feelings, an emotional balm for the ache in her heart. One sunny morning, Naomi opened Ariel's door and froze in wonder. Dozens of new paintings lined the walls and desk, works Ariel had quietly created over the past weeks. Bold colors, dynamic brush strokes, and raw emotion filled each piece. It was Ariel's inner world brought vividly to life. Naomi sat beside her daughter, studying the latest painting, a small, bald girl standing defiantly against a backdrop of darkness, bathed in a gentle, powerful light that seemed to push the shadows away. "Who is this, Ariel?" Naomi asked softly, eyes full of admiration. "It's me, Mom," Ariel said with a small smile for the first time in days. "I wanted to show that, no matter how terrible things get, I'm still here and still standing strong." In that moment, Naomi realized her daughter had begun to reclaim her strength and joy through art. Inspired, Ariel decided she wanted to share that healing power with other students who might still be suffering in silence. Within weeks, and with enthusiastic support from family and community, Ariel officially launched the Stripped Project, an art therapy program for students coping with trauma. Its goal: help them find their voice and confidence through painting. The program quickly attracted participants from schools across the region. Every weekend, Ariel and her close friends, including Maya Thompson, hosted art workshops in a cozy downtown studio. The space became a haven for students who'd endured discrimination, bullying, or other wounds at school. At first, many youngsters were shy, eyes wide with anxiety. But after just a few sessions, they began to open up, telling their stories through vivid canvases. Ariel was always there to gently guide them, sharing her own story to encourage their courage. "You're not alone," she told each group at the start of every workshop. "We're here to face our challenges together. Every painting you make is a piece of your own strength." Word of the Stripped Project spread quickly. Local gallery owners took notice of the raw, moving works created by Ariel and her peers. Soon after, the state's premier art center hosted an exhibition entitled Stripped: Rising from the Darkness. On opening night, the gallery buzzed with visitors. Ariel's paintings, charged with emotion yet brimming with hope, hung in the center. Viewers lingered before each piece, moved by the young artist's resilience. The centerpiece was Ariel's self, portrait, the little girl, bald and unbowed, standing firm amidst a storm of darkness. It became a symbol not just of Ariel's journey, but of every child who has faced similar pain. The media turned their focus from the courtroom drama to this story of triumph. Reporters hailed Ariel as an icon of inner strength, and her healing journey inspired millions. At the exhibit, Naomi stood beside Eric, tears in her eyes as they watched their daughter speak confidently about her passion. Eric squeezed Naomi's hand and said softly, "I think Ariel has finally found the best way to heal herself, and now she's helping so many others find hope too." Naomi nodded, her face radiant with happiness. "You know, Eric, this is what I wanted most all along. Not just winning the case, but seeing Ariel truly happy and at peace again." Meanwhile, Ariel surveyed the gallery crowd with a gentle, proud smile. Her heart felt light. She knew her story was making a positive impact. The stripped project had grown far beyond a small pilot. It had become a movement, a testament to hope, healing, and the power to rise from the darkest times. Ariel knew her journey was far from over, but now she was ready to face whatever lay ahead with courage and confidence in her heart. After the political dust settled and those who harmed Ariel faced the consequences of their actions, the Daniels family began to find moments of peace again. But Naomi and Eric both understood that, even with victory won, Ariel's emotional wounds would still need time to fully heal. In the weeks that followed, Ariel often spent long, quiet hours alone in her room. But instead of succumbing to her sorrow, she turned to art as a way to release her feelings, an emotional salve for the ache in her heart. One afternoon, Ariel received a formal letter from the White House. She opened it in the presence of Naomi and Eric, her eyes widening as she read the presidential seal and the lines that followed. "Dear Lieutenant Colonel Eric Daniels, in recognition of your courage, perseverance, and invaluable contributions to educational reform, I am honored to inform you that you will receive the United States Presidential Citizens Medal. The award ceremony will take place at the White House early next month, attended by senior administration officials and community representatives nationwide. Sincerely, the President of the United States." Eric stood speechless at the unexpected news. Naomi and Ariel threw their arms around him in overwhelming pride and joy. Naomi managed a tearful smile. "You deserve this, Eric. What you've done has helped Ariel and changed the future for so many children." The medal ceremony was held in the East Room of the White House, its atmosphere solemn and heartfelt. Amid an audience of dignitaries, the president personally pinned the medal on Eric. Taking Eric's hand, the president spoke with deep respect. "Lieutenant Colonel Daniels, this nation is proud of you. What you and your family have done goes beyond fighting for your daughter. It has been a fight for all American children. You have reminded us of our duty to protect every child's rights and dignity. Thank you." Eric accepted the medal, his voice resonant and sincere as he addressed the crowd. "I am honored to receive this award, not just on my own behalf but on behalf of my family, especially Ariel, my daughter, who taught me what true courage looks like. I hope our story shows everyone that we each can make a difference when we stand up for what's right." As Eric finished, sustained applause filled the room, and many eyes glistened with admiration. That moment was not only Eric's honor, but a powerful reminder of our collective social responsibility. Back at Lakeside School, after the resignations of the board members involved in the scandal, the school began a genuine rebirth. A meaningful change came when Jason Reed, the art teacher who had supported Ariel from the very beginning, was appointed the new principal. On his first day, Jason addressed the assembled faculty, students, and parents with clear sincerity. Today marks a new beginning for Lakeside School. We will rebuild an educational environment where every student is respected, treated fairly, and protected. No one should ever live in fear or feel alone again. His voice wavering with emotion, Jason continued, I will never forget what happened to Ariel and the other students. Their stories brought me here today. I promise you that under my leadership, Lakeside will become a beacon of compassion, equality, and justice. Jason's pledge was met with enthusiastic applause. Students, parents, and teachers all felt that the school they cherished was rediscovering its true values, emerging from the shadow of its past. As for the Daniels family, Ariel continued to run her art program with passion and joy. Her works were displayed far and wide, and she was invited to speak at schools across the country, inspiring students to overcome adversity through creativity. One evening, after an exhibition in New York, Ariel stood amid her paintings and looked at her parents, her eyes bright with confidence. I think everything that happened to me had a purpose, even though it was sometimes painful. Now I see that I can turn that pain into strength to help others. Naomi hugged her daughter tightly, tears of relief and pride streaming down her face. My sweet girl, I'm so proud of you. You've done something few can. You've turned hurt into hope. Eric stood beside them, deeply moved, recognizing that their struggle had not only helped Ariel regain her faith and strength, but it also sparked profound change that would ripple through families and schools across the nation. Now, under Principal Jason Reed's leadership and inspired by Ariel's example, Lakeside School was more than just reborn. It had become a powerful symbol of justice, equality, and humanity. A brighter future lay ahead, one that everyone who had fought for justice could believe in and help build. Jansui Ngi Trong Vai Ge. After the positive changes at Lakeside and Eric's recognition at the White House, the Daniels family gradually returned to a more peaceful life. But Ariel knew her story wasn't over yet. She needed one final, deeper message to close this long chapter. A few weeks later, at a special press conference held downtown, Ariel stepped onto a small stage. Below her, hundreds of reporters, parents, and students watched intently. People who had stood by her side through it all. She stood there with the confidence of someone much older, her eyes calm and her voice clear. Today, I want to say something I've been thinking about for a long time. Even though what Miss Evelyn did to me was painful and unforgettable, I've decided to forgive her. The room fell into a hushed silence as everyone absorbed the surprising announcement. Ariel offered a gentle smile and continued, her words sincere and heartfelt. Forgiveness doesn't mean I'm forgetting or accepting what was wrong. I forgive Miss Evelyn because I want to let go of the pain and move forward, but I will never forget what happened. Those memories remind me that we must always stand up to protect ourselves and others who are vulnerable. Her words resonated powerfully, inspiring everyone present. Below, Naomi squeezed Eric's hand tightly, tears of pride and emotion welling in her eyes. Eric leaned over and whispered to his wife, his voice trembling, "She's truly grown up, hasn't she?" In that moment, Ariel looked straight into the cameras and spoke with conviction. I hope my story helps anyone who's suffering realize you are not alone, and that truth, courage, and forgiveness are far more powerful than hate and fear. A thunderous, prolonged round of applause erupted from the audience. Once again, Ariel had become a symbol of courage, forgiveness, and healing strength. A few months later, Ariel's journey reached even wider audiences when she accepted a special invitation from the Smithsonian Institution to host an exhibition titled Stripped: A Journey of Renewal. This event marked the final, and most meaningful, turning point in Ariel's healing journey. The opening at the Smithsonian was both grand and warmly intimate. Ariel's works were displayed throughout the spacious galleries, each painting representing a stage of her challenging path. At the center hung her grandest piece, her last, most heartfelt creation. It was a self-portrait, Ariel's familiar bald head and unwavering eyes shining with resilience, surrounded by bold colors symbolizing darkness, oppression, and unending struggle. Beneath the painting, in confident, powerful lettering, were the words, "You tried to erase me, but I painted myself anew." Visitors stood silent before the piece, deeply moved by the extraordinary spirit Ariel conveyed through every brushstroke. In that moment, Ariel's story transcended a personal narrative. It became an enduring emblem of courage, rebirth, and triumph over adversity. Standing beside her masterpiece, Ariel gazed lovingly at her parents, who had supported her through every hardship. Naomi and Eric approached, and the three of them embraced in a touching moment. "Ariel, we are so proud of you," Eric whispered softly. Naomi gently stroked Ariel's head, her voice tender and emotional. "My dear daughter, you've taught me so much, especially about the power of forgiveness and courage. Today, you've completed a healing journey not only for yourself, but for countless others." Ariel looked around at the exhibition's guests, many of whom were moved to tears. She smiled serenely, her heart lighter than ever. The Stripped project had grown beyond a mere program. It had become a movement, a beacon of hope, healing, and the strength to rise from the darkest times. Ariel knew her journey would continue, but now she was ready to face whatever came next, armed with courage and confidence. If this story has inspired you, please like, share this video, and don't forget to subscribe so we can continue spreading powerful messages of justice and compassion. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.